You never forget the smell of scorched corn, not roasted, not grilled off the cob at a county fair. I mean burnt, blackened, folded under itself like bones after a cremation, smoke, gasoline, and dirt. That's what hits you first. And there's something final in it. I've smelled death before, on farms, on highways, once in the oil fields of West Texas. But the smell that filled my lungs that morning was different. It wasn't just fire. It was revenge, and I wasn't the one who lit it. But I'd damn sure be the one to finish it. Name's Ezra Carter. 52. And until last week, I was just another heritage corn nerd trying to live a peaceful life. 47 acres, left to me by my Uncle Silas. Soil so black it glowed under moonlight. Land that had been feeding people since 1847, and I'd planned to make sure it kept going for another 100 years after I was gone. When my wife Nora and I left the Chicago chaos behind, we came here for peace. We weren't looking for HOA battles or lawsuits or torch mobs with too much perfume and tiny dogs. But Delilah Stroud, she brought the fire to our land. And now she's going to pay in every language the court speaks. I was standing at the edge of the field, boots sunk in ash and broken stalks, staring at piles of genetic history burned to nothing. 40 acres of rare heritage corn, gone. Stalks that used to reach higher than my shoulders were now black wire ghost shadows. A thin morning fog curled above the ground, holding what moisture it could before the day burned it away. And that's when I pressed the trail cam remote and hit play, camera 3, timestamp 2:13 a.m. There she was, Delilah, crisp white hoodie, designer boots reflecting moonlight, and a red plastic, gas can swinging from her hand like a damn purse. She didn't trip, didn't sneak, just walked the rows like she owned the place. She knelt beside the Cherokee flint patch and poured, slowly, like watering roses. Then out came the matches, 3 tries, one hand shielding the wind. Camera flare, first flame catches, she steps back, watches, smiles. I paused the video and stared. Small woman, sharp eyes. HOA president for our little neighborhood blotch called Millbrook Gardens. A place with 23 houses, 14 manicured lawns, and one woman trying to rule it all like HOA Napoleon. Too bad she never figured out how land deeds work. And worse for her, she had no clue what she'd just torched. Let me back up. 6 months ago, I thought I'd finally found peace. I walked off my last job as an agricultural biotech engineer at a corporate hellhole called Biolize, watching suit-wearing know-nothings turn food into monopoly tokens. Left it all behind, didn't even look in the rearview mirror. The lawsuit settlement was decent, enough to pay off debt, buy some new boots, and finally breathe somewhere without admin emails. Then the letter came. From my uncle's lawyer, a white envelope, slightly yellowed on the edges. Inside, Ezra, I left you the land, not 'cause you earned it, but because I know you won't let it die. 47 acres. Fully paid, Iowa land, black rich loam, kissed by morning, fog and stubborn cottonwood wind, the kind of place you feel in your blood. That land held something most people didn't know existed anymore. Genetic gold, Uncle. Silas had been saving heritage corn strains for decades, documenting every single one in spiral notebooks that smelled like pipe smoke and mildew. Dozens of varieties, painted mountain Cherokee flint rainbow glass gem, the kind of kernels you see in seed museums, not supermarkets, extinct in the corporate world, alive in Uncle Silas's rows. And now they were mine. The first person to show up after we moved in, Delilah. First morning mail run, I was carrying crates of seed trays when I heard the heels. Not practical boots, not sneakers for walking rural gravel. Heels. Clicking on the crushed limestone path like a metronome of passive aggression. Delilah Stroud, HOA, president since March, widow of a guy doing time for insurance fraud. Realtor license pending review, face like an Instagram filter applied with a putty knife. Mr. Carter, she asked, plastering a smile too tight for her Botox. That's me. I just wanted to personally welcome you to Millbrook Gardens, she said, voice as tight as a dog leash. She handed me a welcome packet. HOA bylaws, a packet light on warmth and heavy on nonsense. I thanked her politely. Then I turned back toward the barn. She followed, paused when she saw the field. Rows already forming, tripwires glinting in the sunrise for bird control, and right then, her pupils tightened like I'd told her I was building a fireworks factory. Oh, she said, you'll be planting? Yes, ma'am. Corn, I said. Heritage lines. Organic? Fully certified, she smiled. That might present aesthetic compliance. Challenges. Aesthetic. Compliance. I gave her a nod, then walked. Away. That was all she needed. The letters came. First violation notices tractor movement at 6:30 a.m. Too early. Unsightly rows, visible from street. Potential property value impacts from industrial activity. HOA suggestion to eliminate forward-facing farm branding, aka wooden sign that read, Carter family corn since 1847. Next came the calls to the township, EPA tips about chemical, runoff, noise complaints about farming, equipment, animal welfare complaints about squirrels eating, corn, not kidding, and every single agency that showed up left shaking their heads, 'cause I'd done my homework. Everything was above board. My university partnership was real. My permits? Solid. Heck, I had more coverage than NASA prepping a moon launch. See, I may look like a backwoods farmer, but I carry a PhD in agricultural science, a specialization in heirloom genetics, and a legal sponsorship through the USDA seed preservation program. But Delilah, she treated knowledge like an allergy. Until the night she crossed the line, gasoline in hand, smile on her face, and $2.1 million worth of history in her rearview mirror. She doesn't know it yet, but every drop of flame she lit, it was burned into the federal court system in high definition. I turned off the trail cam, closed the laptop, stepped over the first scorched row. Dust rose under my boots. I picked up a half-burned corn cob. Purple glass gem, my favorite, gone in a flash. But the fight? Just getting warm. Delilah thought tractors were supposed to be quiet. The same way she thought farmland was, supposed to look like a golf course, and that rural neighbors were supposed to ask permission before planting corn. That Monday morning, she emailed the HOA board, the zoning commission, and, for the third time in a week, the sheriff's office. The noise from my vintage John Deere, she claimed, violated a local ordinance passed 3 months ago. Something about suburban tranquility. Suburban tranquility. We're talking about a 1,500-pound diesel sputtering, gear grinding, crop moving, nostalgia rumbling machine built in 1982. Quiet isn't in the manual. I'd been starting the tractor at 6:45 in the morning, every day, just like my Uncle Silas used to, because corn doesn't wait for latte hour, and sunshine doesn't check Delilah's sleep cycle, and I wasn't breaking any laws. But that wasn't going to stop her. She filed something formal this time. Notice of casual disruption to community enjoyment. It wasn't legally enforceable, not in any jurisdiction I've ever known, but it was signed by one Garrett Stroud, zoning commissioner, and very conveniently, Delilah's cousin. A letter came in the afternoon mail, cream paper, gold letterhead, HOA seal like a knockoff government badge, Delilah's signature sharp and slanted like she signed in anger. Enclosed was a bill. $3,000 in noise fines, 15 citations, 2 weeks of disruption events, each tagged at $200 per violation. Every one of them time-stamped between 6:15 and 6:45 a.m. She was accusing me of breaking a quiet hour, rule that wasn't even in the township's agricultural code. I read it twice just to be sure. It was, however, buried deep in the HOA's new residential policy updates, which, by the way, I never received, because I don't live in her HOA. But they had Garrett the cousin commissioner on their side. And suddenly, real legal-looking letters were coming in hot. I spent an afternoon with a cup of black coffee and my boots on the porch, laying everything out on a folding table. Violation notices, sound test screenshots, the original township map from 1926, and Iowa Code. That's right, state law time, Iowa Code, Chapter 352-11, Section B, Paragraph 3. An agricultural operation established prior to surrounding residential development shall be exempt from any municipal restrictions concerning dust, noise and odor, provided the operation complies with generally accepted agricultural practices. I highlighted it in yellow, then printed 4 extra copies. I drove them down to the township office the next day and politely handed one to the secretary, who I'd known since high school. We used to throw water balloons off the church roof together during youth group. She raised an eyebrow and smiled, like she already knew how this would go. I asked her to place it in Garrett's inbox. She did. Then I headed to lunch like it was just another Tuesday, because I'm not in the business of begging people to like me. I'm in the business of growing things, and now I was growing a case. I got home to find Iris, my daughter, curled up on the back porch with her phone in her hoodie, scrolling. "Dad," she said, all calm and matter-of-fact, "the HOA is trending." She showed me the video. It was grainy footage of a woman, Delilah, standing on the edge of our property, waving another HOA letter in the air, yelling at no one in particular. The caption read, "Karen tries to fine a farmer for growing corn. Farmer doesn't care. 400,000 views, 28,000 shares. Comments flying faster than tractors at harvest. And the best part, Iris didn't even upload the video. It was someone from town. I leaned over. "You didn't film that?" "Nope." "Who did?" She shrugged. "Think it was Mrs. DeGrasse's grandson." The community had eyes now, and ears, and they were on my side. Garrett sent a follow-up letter the next day, suddenly very polite. They were reviewing the complaint. No mention of fines, no threat of legal escalation, and that might have been the end of it, if Delilah hadn't made one key mistake. She built a fence across our shared property line, 3 feet over the legal limit. I wouldn't have noticed if she hadn't added a giant ceramic pot of lavender right at the breach like she was planting a flag. I rolled out my measuring tape. My uncle's stake markers were still in the ground, God bless him. Steel rods, wrapped in red paint and half buried near the barn. Exactly 3 feet, 1 inch. Over the line. I checked the plat map, drew a pencil line for good measure. Then I called Henderson Survey Co., paid for the fastest appointment they had. They came an hour later, measured, mapped, marked. I had it in writing within 24 hours. Delilah's decorative HOA fence? It was invading my farmland. $15,000 worth of tillable black loam trespassed. I walked it myself, counted the rows she stole with that fence. 47 sweet feet of Cherokee purple flint corn grow wild in that patch when the season's right. I printed the survey, added an official notice to remove obstruction, and walked it over to her front door personally. She answered in a robe, one of those fuzzy white things rich folks wear to breakfast in hotel ads. She had green goop slathered all over her face and something chirping from an Alexa device behind her. "This is harassment," she snapped after skimming the top of the letter. "No, ma'am," I said. "It's math." She slammed the door. 3 hours later, I saw her pacing inside her kitchen on the trail cam replay, left hand on her phone, right hand holding the paperwork, screaming at someone. Probably Garrett. I hadn't filed a lawsuit yet, but I had the photos, the plat map, the video of her building that fence with her HOA cronies during an unofficial community beautification event. And now I had the public on my side too. The only person Delilah hadn't tried to weaponize, my corn, but that part was coming. I could feel it in the air. And the thing about Iowa, you learn to read the clouds, the ones overhead, and the ones headed right toward you, because weather might bluff. But enemies like Delilah, they only ever escalate. And next time, she wasn't aiming for noise, she was coming for the dirt itself, and I'd be waiting. Trail cams on, legal folder zipped, tractor warmed up, because she started this, but I was going to finish it. There's something transfixing about cowards in the wild. They never come at you straight. They darken the corners, whisper from the shadows. They sign letters, concern citizens, and hope the system won't ask too many questions. But I've worked with biochemists, lobbyists, and federal case analysts. I've seen how people with money and time use paperwork like a weapon. Delilah. Stroud might have thought she was the first woman to figure that out, but she picked a fight with a man who once wrote patent case files thick enough to stop bullets, and I document everything. It started with a paper landslide, notices, fines, complaints, all anonymous, but each signed with that same manicured legal sharpness, the same phrases, the same backhanded suburban diploprod. We, the undersigned, request mandatory inspection of the corn plot due to potential environmental stress indicators. Who uses the word indicators unless they've read enough legal drama to fake a degree? That first pile came Monday. By Friday, I had received separate complaints to the township 3 formal EPA inspection requests. OSHA reports, IRS, tip, claiming my corn operation was a shell business. If you're counting, that's 15 anonymous complaints in 4 days. Each one required official review, and each one stole hours of my week like a petty clock robber, making phone calls, opening gates, welcoming yet another clipboard. Some of the inspectors stayed quiet. A few apologized. One of them, a 30-something from the Iowa Department of Agriculture named Miller, just shook his head and muttered, "Christ again," when he stepped out of his truck. "We've had 5 calls in a week, Mr. Carter, all from residents on your street. Sounds coordinated." I smiled, handed him a thermos of black coffee, and said, "Sir, I believe it is." At night, Nora and I sat at the kitchen table sorting the physical copies. Each file marked and time-stamped. Iris printed the digital ones, highlighted the similar phrases, unnatural crop noise, voter-verified resident concern, pesticide density concerns despite organic label. "Dad," she said, "it's literally the same writing style over and over." Nora already had 2 tabs open, one for legal blogs, one for FOIA request forms. That's when we went surgical. Some folks swing shovels at problems, us. We click Submit Request with 5 attachments and a line that says, "I'd like to know the IP address and originating source of these submissions for a pending legal inquiry." It was time to bring in the digital lens. Within the week, responses came floating back like letters from ghosts. Government systems, especially the ones Delilah thought she could drown in red tape, have digital logs and those anonymous complaints. They weren't just sloppy, they were all from the same IP address. Want to take a wild guess which home Wi-Fi network they came from? Delilah's. Every single form submitted, every fake name she used, from Gloria R. of Concerned Citizen to Environmental Defender, shared timestamps within 20 minutes of each other. One was even uploaded from a device with a name that read, Delilah Backup iPad. Hand to God. Can't make that up. I called Tommy Brennan, our local deputy, over on a Friday. He stood over the pile of evidence with arms crossed. Trespassing, false reports, abuse of law enforcement time, wasting federal agency resources. He stopped, raised a brow. You think she's spiraling? I didn't answer. Mostly because spiraling implied she had some sense of balance to begin with. Meanwhile, Iris had taken matters into her own hands. She clipped together a video, still images of all her mum's FOIA submissions, along with photos of the inspectors rolling up and me handing them eggs as apology gifts for their wasted time. She added a simple title. My dad got reported 15 times for growing corn by the HOA Karen across the fence. The thing went thermonuclear. 0.2 million views in 48 hours. Comment sections exploded with corn-based puns, sarcasm and commentary on how HOA culture was going off the rails. My personal favourite. If cornfields offend you, maybe don't move next to one and then pretend to be 14 different people on the internet. By now, the university had taken notice. Dr. Yamamoto, my lead research contact, called me one afternoon. Her voice was polite, but there was hesitation behind it. Ezra, she said carefully, we received an anonymous email claiming you were using federal research funds to finance a personal farming operation disguised as academia. I closed my eyes slow. Was it from a Martha Johnson? Maybe a Robert T. Hicks? I asked. Pause. Yes, she said. Same person. Delilah. Confirmed via IP. Another pause. Then a laugh. Genuine, tired, confused. Is she serious? Oh, she's funded by Rage and Hairspray. Doc. Dangerous combination. That night, I updated the paper trail folders. 3 binders now. Zone 1. Legal harassment, noise, permits, etc. Zone 2. Digital fraud and false identity. Users Zone 3. University defamation claims with traced IP logs. My wife labelled them in red ink. Fire, wire, and smile. Because they were going to bring legal heat, digital evidence, and her downfall, and we'd smile when it was done. We weren't playing checkers anymore. This was chess. High level, deep board. My farm wasn't just a patch of dirt anymore. It was the centre of a federally supported, publicly rallying storm. And Delilah, she was now a character national media had their eye on, thanks to the TikTok explosion and the hashtags like Karen killed corn, HO burned down, grow Ezra grow around that time. Channel 3 News showed up uninvited. Mr. Carter, do you believe the local HOA is weaponizing government systems against rural farmers? I looked right at the camera. I believe some people forget the land has memory and the law has enforcement. Later that night, the story aired during the 6 o'clock news. People started driving past the property slow, not for trouble, but for support. One kid left a thank you letter in the mailbox, said his grandpa used to grow painted mountain corn too. That note still sits above my kitchen window, but not everyone was nodding and smiling. Delilah had gone quiet. Silent drive-bys, motion triggered, lights catching her pacing. At the property line, one ankle cast in security night blue, one hand always holding her phone. Trail cam caught her, crouching near the electrical box one night at 1:42 a.m. She didn't touch it, but she stood there, staring, like maybe she thought if she stared long enough, the house itself would catch fire on its own. I didn't report her. Yet. I figured she was digging her own hole. And some holes, you let 'em dig a few more feet deeper before handing the law a shovel. Because I wasn't just protecting my family at this point. I was protecting a federal grant, a multi-million-dollar genetic sample library, and a reputation backed by scientists, inspectors, and the community I had earned. Delilah. She was a woman with a fake army of internet residents, a burned reputation, a dying HOA board, and a record so messy even her cousins were getting quiet. And what she did next would cross the final line. She'd shift from legal harassment to sabotage and fire. But she forgot one thing. My corn might have been old, genetically priceless, but I had something even more powerful growing beneath my fields. Proof. And the law loves proof. Some people try to burn you down with gasoline, others try with paperwork. Delilah? She figured she'd try both. I was in the barn working on the moisture monitors while it snowed outside. December had settled over Iowa with the kind of quiet you only get when the temperature dips below truth-telling levels. The last of my frost-protected seed samples had been sorted, stored, backed up twice with metadata and safely shipped to the university for sequencing. Everything was clean. Everything was protected. And that's exactly why she made her move. County Health showed up again. Second visit in 2 weeks. Same truck. Different tone. This time, they had paperwork. Properly filed. Flagged red. Delilah had filed an emergency contamination complaint claiming that chemical agents originating from the adjacent cornfield had leached into her soil. Included were photographs of what looked like a black sludge ring near the eastern boundary and a plastic container half buried under snow. EPA certified terminology, handwritten. Same malformed cursive as her HOA letters. And right at the bottom, in shaky all caps, "This is a public health issue. Examine immediately. Concerned citizen." No signature. But the envelope it was mailed in had a return address, one with a customized Garfield stamp and her handwriting on the flap. You'd think she'd learn. Chuck Kowalski, the local environmental officer, stepped out of his truck wearing a balaclava and carrying a full metal test kit. We exchanged nods. Claims about leaching contaminants, Ezra. "That right?" I said, dry. He sighed. "I know it ain't you," he added quickly. "But process is process. Gotta log it." I pointed at the marshy patch where her complaint was focused. "Want my guess?" I said. "That's her dump spot, from back before she had neighbours. We took samples anyway. 3 inches, 6 inches, 12, 24, full core tubes, sealed and labelled. Chuck had his routine, but before he capped the first core, he showed me something buried at 5 inches. A rusted metal plate, stamped with an old company logo. Prestige, Auto Repair. A red cloud formed behind my eyes. Nora had found property transfer records last week. Delilah's lot? Before it was white farmhouse chic. Used to be a backyard engine graveyard. Not disclosed in her clean title. I nodded at Chuck. "You see what I'm seeing?" He raised his camera, murmured something about criminal non-disclosure, and kept digging. A week later, the report came back. Chuck handed it to me like a loaded weapon. Her complaint had been reviewed, confirmed, and certified by both County Environmental and the Iowa Department of Natural Resources. Contaminants found in her soil included motor oil transmission fluid lead-based solvent industrial-grade degreaser. Banned since 2001, total estimated cleanup cost between $80,000 and $120,000. Cleanup window, immediate. Compliance date set. Letter of enforcement issued. Delilah's property, officially declared a contaminated site, Midwest suburbia with a parking brake fluid problem. Now here's the irony. Delilah had filed a fraud complaint, trying to implicate me while sitting on 2 decades of chemical sludge under her own backyard tulips. And the state, they don't negotiate with liars, especially when you slap the EPA logo on a fake complaint about federally protected seed land. Now she had state-level environmental compliance breathing down her recycled fireplace chimney, and I was just standing in my boots watching the steam rise off my coffee like it belonged there. That night I called Chuck just to follow protocol. "So, any chance she still tries to push this?" I asked. He chuckled. "She pushes. We show photos to the newspaper. One and done." But Chuck wasn't finished. "You should know something though," he added. "That half-buried plastic container, it wasn't just dumped. It looked planted." Planted? Yeah, as in very recently placed. Frostline hadn't even settled around it. We're running basic fingerprinting just to cover bases. I leaned back in the porch chair. The good kind. The one with history in the armrests. "She's trying to frame me," I said. "Yep." "You think it works?" "Ezra," Chuck said, "you're the cleanest operation in the district. She's the one leaking oil and bribing city cousins. We ain't dumb." By now, the township knew. Delilah showed up to the next board meeting in pearls and fury, clutching a manila envelope she waved at the crowd like a magician's last trick. "This man," she said, pointing directly at me from across the foldable tables, "runs an illegal agricultural experiment. I am requesting he be removed from residential border zones for health concerns." Jim Morrison, lifetime farmer, board chair, Vietnam vet, stared back at her over his bifocals like she'd just insulted the corn gods. "Mom," he said slowly, "your oil leak dates to before your mortgage. Your cleanup estimate cleared $100,000. She stiffened. "And your most recent complaint claimed that an organic corn operation produced brake fluid runoff." Silence. Not even the coffee pots murmured. From the back of the room somebody coughed. Then a chuckle surfaced. Then somebody whispered it loud enough to hear. "She tried to frame a cornfield." Laughter broke out like a late summer storm. Nobody saved her. That stain wouldn't wash off. When I got home, Iris was boiling chili and blasting Patsy Cline through her headphones. Nora sat at the table with 3 files open. She didn't say anything, just handed me another environmental report. This one from Chuck's follow-up. And that's when I realized the dominoes hadn't stopped falling. Chuck had filed my soil testing protocol to the United States Department of Agriculture because our corn strains fell under Fed-supported seed preservation, turns out. When you falsify any report connected to a federal agricultural grant, that's not just civil. That's potentially federal agricultural crime. 2 years minimum, 20 if you can prove she tampered with research soil directly, and between her fake reports and the seeds she tried to burn, stole from the storage shed, it was looking less like slander, more like agricultural terrorism. The next day, I fielded a call. Not state, not local. Federal. Checked the number twice. Agent Sarah Chen, USDA Agricultural Crime Division. She wanted copies. So I sent every single letter, every bore sample photo, every trail cam pull, every thermal image of her digging in the snow at 2:04 a.m. So last Tuesday night. She didn't say much, mostly listened. At the end, she told me something I still think about. "It's the quiet farmers we trust, Mr. Carter. The ones who document. The ones who don't scream at cameras. The ones who take photos instead of vengeance. Thank you for staying calm. You're helping us catch someone who thought silence was powerless." That evening, Delilah drove past slow. Didn't stop. didn't glower. Headlights angled at the cabin for a second too long. I could see her silhouette through the window. Jaw tight, eyes alive with something not quite fear, not quite acceptance either. Desperation, maybe. The kind you can't fix with HOA minutes or cousin label letterhead. I stayed quiet. Let her taillights fade over the hill, because this wasn't over. But it was over for her. She just didn't know it yet. There are two sounds I'll never forget. The first is the way corn snaps when it burns fast, like bone, but softer. The second is the slow whoosh of propane-fed, fire-catching diesel vapor. That's what woke me at 2:15 in the morning, and that's what confirmed everything we'd been preparing for. I didn't panic, didn't even run. I slid my boots on, grabbed the pre-packed gear bag from the mudroom, then checked camera 4 on the screen mounted above the kitchen sink. It was already recording. 3 figures. All black clothes, hats pulled low, gloves moving down my east, field like fumbling shadows. One of them crouched beside the storage shed, lit something, then all 3 ran like whitetails during shotgun. Season, camera 3, showed a separate blaze lighting up near the Cherokee flint plot camera. 7, captured a flicker of someone doubling back to scatter accelerant. Near the North Row irrigation, none of them realized the system was live streaming in real time to a secured off-site server at the university's AgTech building. Every face partially caught, every footstep outlined in thermal. This wasn't a crime in progress. It was a case already. Built, I called it in by 2:30. Volunteer fire units were rolling down the gravel grade toward Gate 3. I unlocked the side fencing to let them through, stepped out with a flashlight in one hand and a fire extinguisher in the other. Squad leader Jim Thayer jumped out first. I don't know whether to be pissed or impressed. He shouted over the roar. You were right. His team had the blaze contained by 310 damage. About 4 acres of the 26 actively planted. Miracle, really. Jim waved me over. I've seen professional jobs. This wasn't it. Desperate and sloppy, I replied. Very. He pointed toward a melted red plastic fragment that used to be part of a gas can label. Bright white flakes caught the light inside the puddle. Sugar accelerant. Whoever planned this, he added, definitely didn't realize how cold and damp. March soil stays under surface crust. Amateur firebugs. The next day, rolled in with silence, heavy, overcast, humid, post-burn, scent still hanging in the tree, line, but it wouldn't be quiet for long. By 10 a.m., Agent Sarah Chen was parked in my driveway with a federal badge in one hand and a full legal case folder in the other. Behind her came 2 unmarked vans, one labeled Department of Agricultural Investigations, the other Insurance Division, Oversight Team. She walked up like we'd just seen each other last night. You good? She asked. Better than the ones who ran. Inside we sat. Coffee poured. Intel exchanged on Agent Chen spoke with measured precision. Emotionless, but not cold. We've confirmed an attempted act of agricultural terrorism under federal code. The fields qualify as protected due to their seed bank status, research partnerships, and pending pharmaceutical licensing with 3 academic institutions. I poured more coffee. Chen continued. As of this morning, we've frozen Delilah Stroud's financial assets, served a warrant on her digital devices, and put 2 domestic GPS warrants into effect. I nodded slowly. You planning a morning arrest or an evening optic? She passed a file across. She's already in federal custody. Turns out, the insurance fraud angle tripped more wires than the fire. When they torched my seed plots, several of which had pre-registered DNA not only stored, but insured at full scientific replacement value, they, didn't just commit arson. They hit protected intellectual property. According to Maya Patel, my insurance agent and enforceable claims support rep for the USDA, the destroyed plots were covered in categories like genetic, hazard exposure, loss of irreplaceable bioresearch, specimen seed propagation interruption crop development, impact environmental security violation, one lost bucket of Cherokee purple flint corn, $400,000 in liability. 2 of the rows burned had over 90% sequencing catalogued with ongoing research valued above $1.7 million. All in, my policy had triggered based on insured research value losses of $2.1 million, and every researcher in the Midwest gunning for a patent had now seen my name show up on their paperwork in the loss assessment category. That's about the time the national media showed up. Channel 9 ran the first story. Man's corn crop torched turned out to be worth millions in research material. Then the story spread. CNN, Fox Agriculture, even NPR didn't say much, just gave one quote to the Gazette when they asked for a statement. If you light a match in your neighbor's field, just make sure you're not standing in a puddle when it catches. The trial didn't need delay. Delilah's phone metadata, movement logs, purchase records, and, of course, the trail cam footage put her square in the frame. But she didn't work alone. Turns out, Firestarter number 2 was her ex-husband on parole for mail fraud, and number 3 was Garrett Stroud, cousin, zoning official, and accidental witness to several fake violations reported last year. They formed their own little HOA criminal triangle, and guess who bankrolled the accelerant? Credit card payment from a shared HOA emergency fund. Marked, contingency contract. You can't make this stuff up. But she sure did. And now the receipts were about to bury her 6 feet deep in federal time. My payout hit escrow 10 days after the incident. Maya Patel called me. Voice chipper like a weatherman predicting spring just showed up a day early. Ezra, your insurance release was approved at full claim value. I asked her to repeat it. She smiled through the phone. You're the first person I've ever represented whose losses were so thoroughly documented that the adjuster asked to use your case for training. Interns. Not surprised, I said. Same, she replied. I told Iris by handing her the check. She read the number, paused, then asked, Is she going to go to prison forever? I shrugged. Close enough. Nora didn't say anything. She just leaned on my shoulder and whispered, Told you documenting everything would matter. The next community board meeting was packed, not because anyone expected Delilah to show. She'd been booked without bail, and the sheriff's dash cam footage was already leaked online. But because the last 20 members of Millbrook Gardens wanted to know what came next, they asked me to speak. I stood up quietly and addressed them in the same voice I used to talk to. Seedlings, I'm of the opinion that fences should be where property ends, not where relationships do. Pause. But when a neighbor tries to burn down your future, there's not much choice left. Next meeting, Millbrook Gardens HOA voted to dissolve. And I'm now sitting on the committee that rewrote the whole subdivision's land charter into a mixed agriculture community trust. Research and community-led, with zero voting power for landlords or inactive property holders. Delilah tried to build a skyscraper of control above foundation cracks she didn't bother to check. But I built my case brick by brick. And now she's looking at 20 federal charges, binding across both property and cybercrime laws. Minimum sentencing, 16 years. No parole, damage owed. More than she'll earn in 5 lifetimes. I didn't set out for revenge, just peace. But when they raise the flame, you plant fireproof roots and you grow anyway. Delilah Stroud walked into federal, sentencing wearing a grey jumpsuit, no pearls, no Clipboard, no HOA board behind her, no cousins to file, complaints on her behalf. Her shoulders had collapsed, inward like her pride had finally packed its bags and left the state. Half the county showed up to watch. The courtroom was filled with farmers in ball caps, university scientists with black briefcases, 3 reporters, and 1 older woman from town who brought me a pumpkin pie last fall after the fire. The judge didn't waste anyone's time. "Mrs. Stroud," he said, "you didn't just commit arson. You didn't just harass a neighbor. You didn't just waste government time or misuse public systems. You took irreplaceable genetic material, seeds meant to feed your grandchildren's America, and tried to wipe them from the planet because your ego couldn't stand a tractor at daylight. Your actions escalated from neighborhood nuisance to full-blown agricultural terrorism. You destroyed intellectual property, disrupted academic partnerships, nearly sabotaged federally funded research, and attempted insurance fraud using HOA emergency funds." He leaned forward. "And the worst part? You did it with a smile." He sentenced her to 18 years in federal custody, with no opportunity for parole for the first. 12.6 million in restitution, 8 million in restitution to Wayne, million to the grant programs, $950,000 in soil cleanup and public court costs, the rest to be paid directly to the Agricultural Heritage Trust Ezra Carter helped launch. She fainted before the court was dismissed. Can't say I felt bad. Her house was seized and later sold. As is, which is polite institutional lingo for toxic wreck with baggage. Her cousin Garrett got 5 years plea deal for obstruction and falsified records. Her HOA board disbanded within 10 days of her arrest. Homeowners met privately to vote in a resolution, declaring their entire system void, and then something remarkable happened. They asked me for help, what we built next, something no HOA in the country had seen coming. What used to be HOA land, the common area, her fence line fines, the tool policing rules and petty citations, all restructured into a community agricultural heritage trust. Members contribute to seed preservation laws, habitat restoration, and 2 acres now house the Midwestern Heirloom Corn Conservation Center, federally recognized. We opened it this spring. It sits where her designer gazebo once stood. Today, our property isn't just home. It's a research hub, a living seed bank, a story told in cornstalks and pollen drift. Here's what it looks like now. 2 officially sequenced corn varieties, listed endangered heirloom strains, research funded by university endowment, federal grants, and yes, her seized HOA fees, a functioning on-site library staffed by Nora workshops for visiting AG students, veteran internship rotations built around agricultural healing, and every September, during peak harvest, we open our gates to the community. Hundreds come, families, children, schools from nearby towns. Kids walk between the rows with bright paper tags, tying their names to their favorite stalks. We call it the Corn Legacy Path. Last fall, I saw a boy run, stop next to Cherokee Flint, thread his fingers through the husks and say, "This one's mine. It's the strongest." He didn't know the story behind it, didn't need to. He just knew it mattered, and that it still stood. This isn't a sob story where the farm gets saved by a last-minute miracle. There was no lottery ticket, no long-lost uncle wiring money from Belize. It was every last bit of patience I had left. Every folder I built, every form I filed, every camera I placed, every audio trigger, every inspection walked out to the gravel road to shake hands with another clipboard. This story got its happy ending the old-fashioned way, with law books and longevity. Sometimes people ask me what I'd say to Delilah now, if there's anything I'd want to tell her. I always give them the same answer. Nothing. She was never listening anyway. But if she could hear me, I'd say this. You don't get to gatekeep the earth. Delilah. You don't get to put a fence around soil history and charge it a monthly fee. You thought you could crush something. Because it didn't look like the brochures you sold back in Des Moines. But the land remembers, and it always reclaims what's real. The final insult? Delilah now works laundry services at the Federal Correctional Facility in Danbury, Connecticut. A woman who policed lawn gnomes and filed noise violations is now paid 43 cents an hour to fold sheets stained by other women's regrets. And every paycheck she draws, 30% is garnished, deposited straight into the grant account at the USDA Midwestern Preservation Fund, because that's the law. She wanted control. Now she's paying me to grow corn. Last week I got a letter from a man in Kansas, former Marine, turned first-generation farmer, said his HOA tried to fine him for planting alfalfa near his own kitchen window because it attracted too many insects, said he felt like giving up until someone forwarded him the video of my story, the one Iris stitched together from courtroom footage, university interviews, and old trail cam clips. He scanned in a note, handwritten in pencil. You gave me hope. You showed me we're not too late. I wrote him back with a packet of painted mountain seed. Said, plant this, no matter what your HOA says. To the folks watching these stories, let me say this plain. If you've ever been told to roll up your flag, tear down your shed, stop growing, stop building, stop reclaiming your space, you're not alone. You're not the first. But you can sure as hell be the one to press record the next time they try, because documents beat doors and sunlight ruins lies. So plant, not for spite, not even for revenge. Plant because the ground remembers, and because nothing terrifies control freaks more than something they couldn't kill with a fine or flame. If you've got a story, a neighbor that makes life hell, or a HOA trying to turn your land into a punishment, drop it in the comments, because here's the truth. What they did to me ain't rare. What I did back, less rare by the day, we're just getting started.